Alright, y'all. Lock up your daughters, your sons, your cousins, nephews, everybody. Death is coming for y'all. What's going on, guys, and welcome back to the channel. Always happy to see you guys here. And welcome back to my Final Destination film review series. Finally at Final Destination Bloodlines, the newest kid on the block. This is something that's been talked about for a couple of years now, and it took them 14 years. I cannot believe it's been that long. 14 years for them to finally come out with this. So now we finally have it, and it's finally here to grace us. We are finally here at long last, and stay tuned for a ranking video of all 6 films, which I'll be going over from worst to best, so watch out for that. And if you have not caught them yet, I have the links to my reviews of the first 5 films in the link in the description down below, so check those out when you can. So what you have here is a young woman who has a deadly premonition of a tower collapse way back in the 60s. And it turns out that one of her bloodlines from way later on from the present is having this nightmare. And it turns out that this woman in their premonition was her grandma. So death comes back for each and every one of them, especially the bloodlines that follows, because they were never supposed to exist. And that is one major thing that really separates this one from the others. I heard talks about them trying to change up the formula. At one point they were talking about having like the first responders of a certain devastation be the primary focus, but it turns out that they're going the bloodline route, to where somebody has this premonition from way back when, who actually manages to survive and escape death's capture and grip for decades. Which brings me to the positives for Final Destination Bloodlines. I like how they changed up the formula a little bit. It had the same ingredients of a Final Destination film, but they changed it up to where it's actually somebody from way back in the 60s that had a similar premonition, and because of that, she was able to survive all these years, all these decades, generations. Now her bloodline is pretty much suffering from that. And you have this young girl and her granddaughter, played by Kaitlyn Juana, who's actually having these nightmares and visions and dreams. And I thought that was a really cool mix. A really cool way to mix it up, especially change the formula. It, like I said, it's got the same ingredients and it's got the same premise, but it's in a different way of telling it. So I thought that was pretty cool. I thought that was a good way to keep this series fresh, especially 6 movies in. It was about high time to kind of mix it up a little bit, because especially by that sucky 4th one, it was getting a little tired. You know, you have a group of friends, one of them has a premonition, and then they escape death only for death to follow them, you know, one by one, and to get them. And I was getting a little tired, so they needed to throw something fresh, especially at this point, and I really did enjoy that. Now, I don't know which one I would have enjoyed more, which is the one we got, which I did, or the one that they were going with, which was the first responders, which if this does end up being a success, and it will, I guarantee you that, it's already made bukus of money, it's already made past its budget, they'll probably go with the first responder direction that they were going to go with in this one. But as far as the bloodline storyline for this one, I thought that was a nice way to mix it up. Again, it was a cool way to keep it fresh and just keep it new. And again, as I mentioned the characters briefly earlier, I like the characters in this. Again, they go this route to where it's not just a bunch of friends that really don't give a crap about each other and just tries to survive this horrendous thing. They actually go the family dynamic route, and I really did enjoy that. And like I said, the characters was actually quite enjoyable, especially one played by Richard Harmon, which is the dude with the piercings and all that. I thought he was the most entertaining one out of this group. He got the most laughs from me. He was a cocky, smart-ass, and everything you want in a character that you want to like. I thought he was pretty cool. He was the most enjoyable character in this whole entire franchise. Even though I've harped on characters I've liked in the past, none to this extent. And I gotta talk about the main man, Tony Todd. Let me take a second here to kind of reflect on this. This was literally his last acting job before he passed away. And the way that they handled his character, it's nothing like I thought they were going to. Especially back in the day when the second film came out, I thought they were going to make up something to where maybe he's death himself or something as the reason why he knows so much about this. But it turns out it wasn't nothing like that. But without giving anything away, mum's the word, the way they handled his character in this was genius. And you guys all know that I'm a big fan of Tony Todd's work, especially his Candyman films, minus the third one. He's just such a legend, and for him to show up in this for one final time, and the way they handled it was awesome. And I'm getting a little choked up here, so forgive me, but the way that they handled that scene, he actually made up some dialogue, ad-libbed some dialogue as a reflection of what he was actually going through as his final scene, and just the way they paid that off. Tony Todd did a majority of the lines in that scene, and the way he came off, the way the words he chose. Oh, yeah. So yeah, there's that. It really choked me up, especially this time. This makes my second time watching this, and after that scene was over with, yeah, it took me a minute. But yeah, that was awesome, and I really enjoyed what they did, especially as a proper send-off to that character. I'm not lying. I actually did get choked up. I myself wiping my eyes and tears away plenty of times, especially during that scene.
Good luck.
The gore and the kills is actually quite enjoyable. I didn't quite harp on this in this review series, but by the third film, they started looking a little CGI. They started using CGI blood, but at this point, I kind of expected that. You kind of expect that from these films because of how out of this world and how crazy these deaths are, because they're just so unnatural. But just the way that this entity and this death, works in these films, I thought that they did a really nice job here, regardless of its CGI. And the worst was the Final Destination, the fourth chapter. That one would always suck. That one was very obvious. But by the time they got to the third film, even though they used CGI blood, it didn't look as bad. By the time we got to this film, I kind of expected that. But regardless, I enjoyed the kill scenes in this. I thought they revved it up just a little bit more from 5. And it was pretty satisfying, especially for Gorehounds, especially for Final Destination films. If you come to this film expecting balls to the wall, death scenes and gore and blood and all that stuff, this is definitely going to be for you. That's for sure. I don't need to harp on this again, but I feel like I need to say it one more time. I just love the way that they changed up the formula a little bit. Like they said, they had the ingredients of a Final Destination film in this, but they just changed it up in terms of story. And again, I think at this point, they needed to do something like that. And I really did appreciate that. They needed to do something other than what they've been doing as a wash, rinse, and repeat style, which is kind of how I felt, even though I didn't harp on it that much. Maybe I should have, but after watching this, it really dawned on me how much that was really appreciated on the direction that they went. And it really makes me even more excited for the next film if that comes to fruition, which I'm pretty sure it will, because I think the box office will speak louder than words. But because of the whole family dynamic, it actually made you care for these characters. It wasn't just caricatures, it wasn't just generic, just run-of-the-mill characters that you have seen time and time before, especially like the Horn Dog and the classic teenage schoolgirl. It wasn't anything like that. It actually had a meaning, and especially just a way for you to care even more for these characters, because just the whole family dynamic, which I appreciate that because I'm close with my family too. And it just gave this film just something, again, something new, and just a breath of fresh life into the series, which actually had meaning. Not that I'm saying the others sucked, minus the fourth one, because of that lack of dynamic, but I liked the way that Final Destination Bloodlines handled that. And it's just a way for you not only to enjoy the death scenes, because you don't really go to these films to watch Shakespeare or watch good acting or anything like that, but they added this layer of just the dynamic between the characters because they're all related and family, that you just want them to survive. Up until now, it's just been, I don't care about them, just kill them off, just get them death. This one, it really changed the dynamic for that as well. It just really changed my perspective on how I see and viewed these characters, and I really did appreciate that. Again, it's just that newer way of them throwing something fresh and actually making an effort, especially in the character department. And I've got to talk about that opening scene. As I mentioned many times in this film review series, they got that one scene that opens each of these films up, and I think this one was the best that this series has ever brought out, where they go up in this huge high-risk tower, and it's like glass everywhere, and when things starts going down and things just starts going off the hinges, literally, I think I felt about the same way I did with Final Destination 2 with that whole car pile-up scene at the beginning of that. I felt the same way in this as I did for that film. I thought it was really riveting. It was very on the edge of your seat, tense, and it was awesome. I love the way that this one kicked off. It makes you really wonder how they're going to top it off for the next one, which I'm sure they will, because they've kind of been doing that in short of like some smaller minor ones, but they've managed to top it off each time, and so far so good. Moving on to the negatives, I didn't really think our main lead was all that interesting, was all that good here. I didn't think Kaitlyn Juana was the right fit for this type of role. No offense to the actress, I'm sure she's really great in whatever else she's done. This is the only thing I've seen her in. But I think she was kind of miscast just a little bit. She definitely wasn't no Mary Elizabeth Winstead from Final Destination 3. So far, I think she was the best lead role in this franchise that we've had to date. I just didn't really get into the new girl's character that much. I didn't think she brought as much interesting dynamics and emotions to it. She was just, the whole entire time, she was like freaked out, which is what you're supposed to do in this situation, but the way she delivers it, the way she executed it, I didn't really think that it was all that good. It was not as strong, and I couldn't really get into her. All the other actors, all the other characters, I got into, especially Richard Harmon, but her was a little bit questionable. And this is a sort of a light negative, and it's a little bit of a logic issue with me. But the grandma, after surviving that towering inferno all those years ago, she gets held up in this cabin that she builds by hand, and it's basically a death trap. It's basically a place to where any time death could have came for her very easily. It actually shows it in a scene that death could have came for her very easily later on in the film. So it just begs the question, how is she able to survive all those years, a generation worth, and not having nothing happen to her? The way that Claire Rivers in Final Destination 2 handled things, which was like her committing herself into that psychiatric room where like nothing else is around and there was no wood, there was nothing. That made more sense to me than what the grandma, the character in this did, in Final Destination Bloodlines did. Plus there's a whole logic issue on, okay, if she never stepped out of that place for decades, how did she eat? How did she grow stuff? It never showed any of that. So, I don't know. It's just a whole logic issue with me. It just kind of bugged me, kind of like that fly at a family barbecue. It just wouldn't go away. Didn't weigh the film down for me much, but it was there. I just couldn't ignore it. Also, I wish they would have delved in a little bit more into the lore of what this presence is, of what this death supernatural presence is. We're 6 films in, and so far we've just seen characters try to cheat it and beat it. That's basically it. We never really get that much into detail about what this thing actually is and why it does what it does the way it does it, because it's so over the top and so gruesome and never happens in real life. Accidents happen, but to this extent of this franchise, nah. No, that's all Hollywood. That being said, I just wish that they would have delved in a little bit more into the lore of what this thing actually is. Like, in Hollywood terms, in this franchise terms, is it a curse put on by someone that had a grudge millions of years ago or something? I'm just saying, I just wish they would have delved in a little bit more into that and got into a little bit more into detail, which is why I thought it would have been cool if they had explained why Tony Todd's character was so creepy in those first two films, to where you always have him expecting when characters is going to see him, where he gives the lines off so cleverly behind you, to where he says, "Claire, I've been expecting you." Like the Crypt Keeper on Tales from the Crypt episode. That would have made more sense. Don't get me wrong, I loved what they did with Tony Todd's character, this being his last film before he passed away. I thought it was genius, and it was quite a tearjerker because of the lines that he delivered, which was not scripted. That would have made more sense. That would have been a good way for us to get a little bit more context of what this death thing is if he'd have been death. But, it is what it is. Loved what they did with this character, but as far as the lore goes, I wish they would have done something a little bit more. And just something, again, to add on to the Bloodlines storyline of this, which I thought was genius and great. That would have been something else to add that's fresh to this franchise. Now, this movie will blow up at the box office. It's already made past its budget and a little bit more. Just the other day, I was reading an article saying that the directors were saying that they were already talking about another one. So we'll just see there. Again, love the movie. Just wish I would have had more on that on the context of this villain. And lastly, I didn't think the ending was all that great. We had 5 of these films before Bloodlines that kind of showcases the same thing, to where you can't cheat death, you can't beat death. No matter what you do, you can slow it down, but you can't cheat it. You can't escape it. Death wins, no matter what. And I wish they would have done a little bit more of a different route in this. Not that I'm saying that this franchise sucks because of that. I love this franchise. I just wish they would have done something more, because it's so predictable that as soon as a certain thing happens, and then the next scene comes on, and you already know what's going to happen. So I wish they would have done a little bit more with that, gone a little bit of a different route than what they did. But bottom line, I had a really great time in this. I thought Final Destination Bloodlines was actually the best in the franchise so far. It's just one of those that was actually the first in the franchise to actually give the characters more of a meaning and more of a dynamic and more of a reason to actually exist within the context realm of this franchise. Again, not saying the others sucked because of that, minus that 4th one. That one sucked. I'm just saying, Final Destination Bloodlines actually had a real purpose and a real meaning in terms of story and characters and dynamic. And, the deaths and kills definitely helped with that. But, it's a Final Destination movie, so what do you expect? I thought it was fun. I thought it was exciting. And you should really own this movie. Final Destination Bloodlines. What was your thoughts on it? Have you got a chance to see it yet? Are you a fan? Was this your favorite Final Destination film? Did this hit you the same way that it hit me? Or was this not your favorite? Did you think that this was kind of the same, only in a different context? Was this not for you at all? Leave me a comment down below and give me your thoughts. Thank you so much, guys, for clicking here and watching this. As always, I really do appreciate it. Like, subscribe, comment, and share. Make sure to click that bell icon so you don't miss a thing if you like what you see. And I will see you on the next one. Peace.